Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning, Motope. Okay, all right, we're ready to go. Just want to mention that we will get started shortly. Welcome, everybody. We will get started shortly. Hey, Tosin.
Hey, Ade, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good, good.
Okay. We're gonna get started shortly. I think I see Janie on the call.
Yeah, I'm here. Happy Saturday, Ade.
Happy Saturday. Wow. Nice to have you on the call, Janie.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Ah, it's a yellow day.
It's a yellow day. Oh, Tulsa is wearing yellow too. We planned it.
Definitely planned.
I didn't get the memo.
Well, you compliment good, so it works.
Yeah. Okay, giving it some balance in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, excellent. We're going to get started shortly. Just want to mention that we'll be getting started in another 2 minutes. We're just giving folks some time to join the call. But in the meantime, you know, I like the yellow look from you guys. Really excited for today's conversation. I'm sure a lot of folks would love to hear what we have to share on the call.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
We're going to get started. OLED production team, we're about to get started. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the OLED Consulting Monthly PM Roundtable. My name is Ade Adeyemi. I'm your host, as usual. Today's roundtable, our topic is around professional career growth in celebration of the Black History Month. If you're joining us for the first time, OLED Consulting is a management consulting firm. We specialize in IT professional services in the areas of staffing, training, and project delivery services. Essentially, we do connect IT professionals to opportunities within the industry And we also provide training and employment placement services for individuals that are looking to get into the fields of project management and business analysis. For today's roundtable, I do have my co-moderator, Modupe Olusoga. Welcome, Modupe.
Sorry, I was trying to go off mute. Thanks, Adi. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Super excited about today's session. Really looking forward to learning. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we'll discuss. Thank you.
Excellent. So we're going to do some housekeeping. We do recommend that you put your mic on mute if you're not speaking. And if you have any questions, we want to make this as interactive as possible. We have some expert panelists on the call today. So please put your questions through the chat and we'll be more than happy to share with the panelists. Okay, just to let you know, for folks that are joining us for the first time, our objective for the PM Roundtable is to create a unique platform for our PM and BA community to share information, network, discuss best practices, troubleshoot industry, talk about industry trends, and troubleshoot project issues while presenting opportunities for career growth. And our goal today, we're hoping that today's roundtable will further that agenda of helping to grow leaders, which is part of our core mandate in the PM Roundtable. The focal point of today's roundtable is around professional career growth in celebration of the Black History Month. We have some expert panelists on the call today. I'm really excited.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, we can hear you. And we do recommend that you put your mic on mute if you're not speaking. We do have some expert panelists on the call today that will be sharing their experience, sharing their stories, and how they've been able to navigate and grow within their career. So without further ado, we'll get started with our first panelist. Introducing our first panelist, I'm going to be introducing Janie Buzabe. Welcome, Janie.
Thank you so much, Ade, for having me. I'm really excited to connect and learn from everyone here today. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us, and we're really excited. Janie has a wealth of experience within the tech space. Janie is an entrepreneur. She has her own startup, which is it's called Immunification. And Janie, I guess Janie is being a bit modest with a short introduction. There's a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge that we're going to be learning from Janie on this call. But I'm going to go next to our next panelist, Tosin Akinwekome. Welcome, Tosin.
Thanks, Eddie. Great to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Okay, excellent. Again, the profile speaks for itself. Folks, you can see Tosin's profile, is a stellar profile, has been within the financial services for several years, and as a director business management and contact center at CIBC, Tosin has a wealth of experience. We're excited to have him on the call. Our final, last but not the least, Anthony. I'm not sure if we have Anthony on the call just yet.
Yes, we do.
We do. Okay, excellent.
Hey.
Hey,
hello, everyone. How are you? Nice to see you again. We had a great time last session last month, and then Tosin, nice to see you again. Really good old friend of mine.
How you doing?
How are you? Again, very happy with this topic. Looking forward to sharing some real nuggets, what's worked so far in the journey that still continues, and I'm looking forward to a very, very, very interactive session. So thank you for having me again, Ade, and the team.
Okay, excellent. Well, I'm excited to have you on the call. I know the folks on this call are excited to have you on the call. So we're going to get right into the conversation. Again, the conversation is around how to navigate as a Black professional within the corporate world, and we'll take a deep dive into learning how these folks on this call have been able to navigate and grow within their respective careers. So I will get rid of the presentation mode, so we get to see everyone's faces on the panel. We get to see folks on the call as well. So So let's get into it. So I guess we're going to get started with the first question. My first question is going to be directed to Janie. Janie, we know you've been a professional within the tech space and working with DMZ, working in other spaces. My question to you is, as a Black professional, or maybe just put it generally, as Black professionals in predominantly white environments, how do we navigate professionally without feeling like we don't belong in these spaces?
Okay, thank you, Ade, for that question. I think it's important to first preface that when I first moved to Canada in 2015, I didn't realize I was Black. Coming from Nigeria, most people are Blackity Black, Black, Black. So it's not a thing that you actually address or realize. I was blessed to come as an international student, meaning that I had a safe space where I could experience my Blackness in predominantly white spaces. To put it in picture, in my very first program, I moved from Nigeria as a tech network engineer, moved to do advertising in Canada. First day of class, very jet lagged. I was the only Black girl in a class of almost 50 people. I didn't even think it was a thing. I'm in Canada. I didn't even realize that it was a big thing until it was time to form groups. And because I had dreadlocks in somehow, and this would take me a little bit later to realize this was the reason, no one wanted to form a group with me. I was like, oh, okay. And then I think 3 weeks later, when we had our midterms come in, and then the professor's like, who's Janie? I'm like, me. And then he's like, oh, looked at me twice and then decided to keep my paper. He's like, oh, can I please keep your paper and use it as an example later on? And then I could see the whole class look at me okay. And then next time it was time to form groups, it was a battle for who was going to get Janie. That was my very first encounter with realizing that I was Black. However, when I was in school, I had people who would tell me things like, that's not okay. Niger girl was just really excited to meet new friends. I didn't even realize microaggressions happening around me. So the first thing I realized is I had this friend, Sam, who was a Sri Lankan background, Canadian, but she was born and raised here, who was very involved in Black spaces and would tell me, Janie, it's not okay for people to touch your hair. It's not okay for people to mock your accent. And I'm like, oh, they were just curious. And she's like, no, they're not being curious. This is what microaggression and racism looks like. So what I'm trying to say is pretty much is how I've been able to navigate the spaces is aligning myself first with allies and mentors who are truly supportive of my career and of my Blackness. And as I grew in my career, now being understanding that what it is like to be Black in Canada, and now taking the time to self-reflect and learn how to manage emotions, how to manage my tone, and how, because usually there's the stereotype of the angry Black woman. So you can say something in the same way as anyone else would say it, but you will come off as more aggressive. So having to learn to manage the way you relate emotions is what I have been doing, and thanks to allies and mentors, and honestly, God, because this corporate streets are wild, and that's how I've been navigating it.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks so much, Janie. I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that you didn't realize you're Black until you came into Canada. And I talk to people, folks that are coming in from Nigeria and other parts, and they tell me, I'm beginning to feel I'm so Black now. These days, it's really interesting because you need to understand that the environment that we're operating in, there's a certain way we need to carry ourselves, and we cannot ignore the fact that we're Black people, and it's different in the corporate world. It's not easy. So we need those mentors. You need allies, and we need to know the difference between allies and mentors. Your allies will advocate for you. Your mentors will guide you how you're going to navigate. So, thanks so much for the share, Janie. This is really exciting. We're gonna keep talking about this because this topic is a very interesting one. And I'm gonna go next to Tosin because this is a topic I feel folks need to understand how to navigate and the challenges. And some of those challenges, one of those challenges that people face and Black people face and other immigrants face is imposter syndrome. And Tosin, my question to you is, Black people, especially immigrants, often feel like we don't belong in these spaces. And my question to you would be, have you felt this way in the past? If so, how did you overcome that imposter syndrome or feeling like you don't belong here?
Yeah, thanks, Adi. I think imposter syndrome I want to say most people feel it, including myself. I have to say that I've talked to enough people to see maybe generally folks when they find themselves in a new environment, in a new space, in a space where maybe it's higher than what you were doing before, or it's different from what you were doing before, that this feeling can be normal. So first thing I would say is don't beat yourself up too much if you haven't. Like I haven't changed roles enough times, almost every time, guaranteed. This comes. But the thing that I think folks should focus on is your response to it, right? Like it can cripple you if you overanalyze it, if you overthink it, it can really cripple your ability to perform in a new space. It cripples your ability to trust people, right? Because you've got your guard up a lot of times. It can cripple your ability to speak with authenticity, to deal with people authentically, because again, you're not entirely sure that the things that are coming out of your mouth are of value. So the implications of letting that thing rest on your mind is extremely important and extremely critical. I don't know if you can say extremely critical, but if you let it sit, it can paralyze you completely. And so when you first get it, I like to think of it as, okay, I think of it as being nervous when you have a performance to do, right? Like this is a good feeling, because it means I'm growing. It means I'm putting myself in a situation that's not entirely comfortable.
Right.
And I changed my mindset to deal with it that way, to say, well, it's because I'm putting myself in a situation that, I'm coming in here 30% ready for it, right? Not 100%. And that allows me to grow. And I want to say that we have to sometimes quiet that voice a little bit, or push it back with other things, right? So mindset around the fact that it's a growth opportunity for me, and it is going to be a learning experience, right? So I'm not gonna get it right out the gate. Just come to terms with that. This is going to be learning. I am not going to be perfect coming out of the gate, and manage your expectation that way. Second, I've talked to enough executives in my own networking that the people that we sometimes look at and say, okay, that person looks like they belong here. There's more of those type of people in this space. You'll find when you talk to them, they have the same feelings, right? They override it because it's been told to them that you don't need to be fully ready in order to take this role, right? It's okay for you to come into this role and have 30% of whatever is on the job description, and you feel comfortable. So part of their mindset and part of that privilege that they've got is that they've been told from time to time again, anytime you grow, you only need 30% to grow.
That's right.
Right? You only need to know 30% of this role, and you only need to know 30% of this thing. Whereas we've been told that in order to take the next role, you need to be ready for the next role, right? And so if anyone's ever told you that, erase, Control Alt Delete, whatever you have to do to sort of remove it from your mindset. So when I learned that, I just look at everybody else differently now. I'm just like, well, you got here, you were 30% ready. You got here, you were 30% ready. And for me, I'm just like, okay, am I 30% ready? Yes, excellent, we're good to go, right? And in my mind, if you can get to that standpoint, then it allows you to also address that feeling as a learning opportunity, that I'm just here to learn, I'm here to grow. And in no time, in 6 months, in 9 months, in a year, I'm going to be a completely different person, because I've taken in as much of my learning, I've invested in my learning. And now maybe I'm at 70%, maybe at 100%. Now I'm a valuable contributor to the team. But I think it always starts with mindset, looking at the situation as a learning experience, and also erasing some of the things that we may have been told in the past, that in order for you to, and I'm sure a lot of immigrants and Black folks hear this all the time, in order for you to be ready for that next role, you need to be ready for that next role, instead of getting that next role and then growing into it.
To it, yeah.
So,
Ade, can I just add something to that, especially like for women? Because sometimes it's like, because Tosin, thank you about like doing the mind work and the individual work, but sometimes it's like you still don't believe you're the voice in your head. And so what I usually tell people is, and I do it myself, is I keep a brag book where I just talk, like I list all the accomplishments I've made and things people have said, YouTube comments on my videos, when the time my boss was loving me and said really cool things. And so when those thoughts come, I just refer back to it. I'm like, you did that, come on, so you're good for this. And this is where, like, after that 30%, and it's the same reason too that there's no good sport team without like cheerleaders. Like, you need to surround yourself with cheerleaders, people who big you up, who can remind you of all the good things and the boss and the amazing person you are when you forget, because we all do. That's just the thing I'll add to that.
Well, this is amazing. I'm having so much fun. I think I'm losing track of what I'm supposed to be doing here now, because I'm moderating this and I'm taking notes. I'm really excited. Thanks so much for the share, Jenny and Tosin. And just to reiterate, it starts with the mindset and having that growth mindset and understanding that it doesn't have to be perfect, because often we come into this space and we think we need to be 100% perfect. And if we can ground ourselves in that, I'm here to be better. I'm not 100%. I'm creating room for growth, and like the 30%, like Tosin said. And also, you know, question is, when do you start to think about how much of it is in my own head? How much of it is my limiting beliefs of what's happening? How am I interpreting what's happening? How do we, you know, perceive those situations? And when we change the mindset, often we realize that these are just invisible barriers. Thanks so much. I'm gonna go.
Can I just say before you move on?
Yeah.
I also want to make it clear that I'm not saying that people aren't looking at you funny. These two things can be true, that people are expecting you to be a certain way, and I'm also saying that you also think about it and say, forget that. I'm ready myself based on it. So it is quite real out there that if you're a Black and immigrant in a space, that people give you less opportunities to make mistakes. That's very true, right? But with that still being the case, what I said about mindset is still extremely important, right? Because if they have those expectations of you and you also are taking in those inputs and those signals and you're internalizing it, it will just cripple you. So it's much easier to look at it that, no, I've given myself a long rope. I'll figure it out. I'm coming here with learning, and despite those things, I think you can put yourself in a better situation. So I don't want to minimize the fact that there's a reason why we feel a certain way, and it's as a result of stories that have been told, stories that we've heard that are true, and as a result, we've all internalized it somehow. But the only way against it is to completely have a different mindset for yourself, despite that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the realness, Tosin. We got to keep it real. This is a community. We want to keep it real with the community. It's not easy, but we just got to figure out the best way to position ourselves. Again, the mindset is key, having the right mindset. So we're going to move on to the next question. And the next question there is to Anthony. Anthony, by all means, feel free to chime in on the previous question, but we're going to move on. My next question here is for you, Anthony. And I know for someone like yourself, you've worked in several leadership capacities, from the financial services now to BCG, what you're doing there. What would you consider your biggest challenge as a Black professional, and how did you overcome it?
Thank you. I think I was just going to talk through, like add to what Jenny and Tosin said. Tosin spoken like a true insider. I mean, Tosin and I obviously going, back in the day as well. I think, I definitely echo everything you said. And one of the things I wanted everyone on the call to go away with is you have to unpack what is set before you already. Start to unpack it, almost like you're basically taking out the layers out of it. That signature, I can be that signature. I can work on Bay Street. What are the requirements for it? And that 30% thing you mentioned, Tosin, as well, and even having a cheerleader as well, Jenny, I think is so important. It's so important. I had a bit of advantage coming in from England and being Black, and the accent came out. The Canadians love British accents, so that was kind of like something I used as well. And then I got in there and it was like, okay, now the honeymoon period is over. You can't move forward again. And, so there was a lot of different experiences I had as well in my whole 8 years in Canada that really and truly, it was shocking to me. But just as a segue back into kind of what are the biggest challenges, I think it's just being seen, really. You have to be, it's funny, and I know it's ironic, you're seen because you're a minority, but I want to say being seen is as simple as you saying the direction in a boardroom and all of a sudden nobody listened to that particular suggestion, but somebody else pushed the same suggestion and it worked. And you're like, okay, that's kind of what I thought it was based on my thinking. And so that's the constant battle that you have. You get tested on your merits almost every second. I've been to meetings, especially on Bay Street, where before and after a meeting, people are checking me on LinkedIn, almost like, I think Tracy, you put it well. I find myself unconsciously having to prove myself without knowing. I have to speak eloquently. I have to speak the most intelligent question in the room, even if it's the last 2 minutes left in the meeting, just so they know that I am aligning with my role level and my competency level is there. And just constantly having to do that, I think it's the problem, in my opinion, that is the greatest challenge. I can't sit down and just sit, I just have to be known that I'm busy. I'm doing the work, Tosin and Jane is coming. They're the people who'll be a director at that level. Oh, I'm directing every day, just doing direction every day. And so having to do that without pausing is the biggest challenge I have. I almost can tell everyone on the call that I don't know what it's like to chill, to just know that I am in an accountability role. I'm influencing, I'm an individual contributor. I'm tested against performance. I am also now, it got to a point in my best year, I was told there were still opportunities for growth because they want to call it weaknesses. And I'm like, okay, is it a weakness or an opportunity to growth? Because if it is an opportunity to grow for growth, they show the growth that you see first. They tell me the opportunity to grow in it, but it was being presented to me as a weakness. I've been told before that I was, I made leadership look a little bit less smart. So therefore I should kind of find a way to not be too smart in the room. So that way the optic is what we call it. I'm sure everyone's laughing. You hear words like lens, optics, there's a way you package it. And so in a nutshell, the identity crisis at this level, I think, is the biggest issue for the challenge. You just don't know. Some days you get it, you're fine. You're showing who you are for 3 months. And then some person comes in and says, no, I don't like the way you present yourself there, changing you are. Then 2 years later, you're still trying to find out who you are as a manager. Am I a type A manager, type B? Am I a YX? All over the place. And sometimes, back to what Tosin said, is really and truly, stick to something and just that's your brand at the end of the day. Start to know what your brand is, which your color, as we are, and roll with it. Let's get to that point, because honestly, that's my biggest challenge. Identity crisis, too much changes, having to prove myself unconsciously. It's almost the same thing. And it's definitely very true that every time people tell you, we call it next level competency. You cannot get promoted if you don't exhibit next level competency. But that is really something you have to unpack. There's nothing like that. You already have it. In fact, I've learned that I've unlocked greater potentials in a higher role than I did in a lower role.
Yeah.
I just need to get there, right? It's actually a little bit easier in a sense, but I didn't understand it. And honestly, if I don't get to that level, how was I supposed to know? How was I supposed to know things like PDG, professional development goals, with like someone reporting to me? I became someone who motivated others to be successful and grow by growing others. But if I didn't have opportunities to grow, how could I grow by growing others? So it's a very loaded question nowadays, very loaded question. But I thought I could sum it off, identity crisis, not subconsciously fending for myself. And then just being completely confused sometimes. That's really what the challenges are.
It's interesting. That's lots to unpack there, Anthony. And I think the one that struck me the most is identity crisis. And we find a lot of people, and even kids, This is how real it is. Kids and parents or professionals, you find ourselves in a corporate world, and it's almost a psychological thing that you need to be a different individual, and which is why we need to figure out how can we be our authentic selves, and also understanding that sometimes your authentic self may not be the right persona. No, keeping that in mind. May not be the right persona for that situation, for that work situation, and you need to just find a way to navigate. And it's a loaded question, and I appreciate the realness, Anthony. And you understand that how do we? A lot of us Black people, you think about what we do to put ourselves in situations where you can be seen. I know Anthony talked about being seen. You need to have that degree. You need to be certified. You need to be, have that extra bit of what's it called? It's not social license this time. It's more like your certificate that guarantees that this person is truly the pro that belongs here. It's really interesting. Thanks so much, Anthony. We're gonna keep talking. Guys, and we'll get you guys to chime in, Tulsi and Janie. Janie, this next question, I'm directing it for you for intentionally, because I know the work that you do with DMZ, and you work with a lot of Black professionals, and there's a lot of funding involved. And this question is about the recent events, aka George Floyd incident. How do you feel like this sort of recent event with the George Floyd incident has changed the way employers view Black people?
Well, that's a great question, because just context, I'm a very typically positive person. So I always try to find a positive, optimistic spin on things. And I was also in an interesting position when the George Floyd situation happened, in that I was working for an organization that served primarily Black professionals. And I'm now in another space too that serves Black entrepreneurs. So I definitely saw the cycle of George Floyd's murder and how organizations viewed Black talent. So first of all, it was, oh my goodness, Black people exist. That was the first impression. Everybody and their daddies wanted to get a Black person in their organization. So a lot of dollars were just thrown at this thing. A lot of PR was thrown at it. And there was a lot of, if you were providing services as a Black person, it was a great time. It still is a great time to be a Black person, but hear me out. And then a year out, like 6 months to a year out, we started, everything that was focused on Black started being said as BIPOC. So we started going back to what it was normal. So BIPOC being Black, Indigenous people of color, AKA everybody in the world who is not white. So, and now we're going now into underrepresented, meaning that it's everybody who is not white, again, in another term. So the focus has been slowly pulled back now on being Black and focus on Black professionals. However, companies are still saying they want to hire Black and hire diverse. And the role of hiring Black and hiring diverse is now only left with TA, talent acquisition. And so there's a lot of tokenism and performance or performative allyship happening in the corporate space. And that's so real. I want people to know that this is real. The fact that companies want to hire you doesn't mean that they're actually doing the work to keep you and grow you. There's very few companies who are actually putting in that work still. And the truth is, there are companies that are doing that. So that's what I've noticed when it comes to how George Floyd's murder affected being Black in Canada. However, it's still a great time because it definitely woke some people up, a lot of people up, about the realities of being a Black professional in North America and the changes that need to be put in place. Some people are listening, some people are performing, and some people are just being complacent.
Wow,
well said.
Thanks so much. Well said. A lot to unpack there, Janie. And it's interesting when you think about it. As Black professionals, understanding the moment. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a Black professional, how do you take advantage of the moment? How do you, in your experience, and I'm going to stay with you, Janie, in your experience, what have you seen, or what advice would you have for Black professionals or entrepreneurs that are looking to take advantage of this scenario? I mean, the situation, it's obviously, we talk about tokenism, and some organizations are doing that, but there's also got to be a sense of, we also need to recognize the moment. And as professionals, how do you take advantage of that?
Honestly, I've heard people say things like, oh, I don't want them to hire me because I'm Black. And I'm just like, why really? What's your real why? Because I don't care if you hire me because I'm Black, because I'm going to come there and be my authentic self. And my authentic self is unapologetic, is very positive, is loud. And when I see issues, I'm actually trying to solve them. And what that means invariably is that I don't stay long at any place, and really, truly, and that's fine, because the situation, the system wasn't made to support people like me. And I know that. And so what I tell a lot of Black immigrants, even in communication and the network, is you are the CEO of you, not your boss, not your employer. So don't feel attached to a brand that you didn't create. It's not your daddy's company. Focus on yourself and what you're trying to get out of the opportunity. When you're interviewing, don't just let them ask you questions, ask them questions too. Does it actually fit the opportunity you're looking for? Because when I tell people, what's your career roadmap? What are you trying to do? These organizations and these opportunities are tools to help you get what you want to do for yourself. And so then that's really how to take advantage of the situation as a Black professional, I'll say, is what do you want to do for yourself? What's your 5-year, 10-year roadmap? What are the organizations that can help you get to that plan? And so even with my personal brand, my social media, I look at my job description, I'm like, is my company paying me to be shouting them up on my LinkedIn and all of that? No, I do it as a value add because it serves my purpose. Only when it actually serves my purpose and the community I'm trying to serve. And there's people who are like, oh, I just started a job, it's less than a year, should I move? How are you feeling? Are you truly happy? Are you getting towards the goals that you plan to get? Or did they just hire you and put you in a silo where you're not getting the visibility, where you're not growing in your career? Because guess what? I even recently heard yesterday, someone got laid off from a company after 15 years. And when the team members asked what happened to that person that just got laid off, they were like, well, I can just tell you that he wasn't fired. Or I can tell you he was laid off, not fired, something like that. They didn't even give the team that he was working close with an explanation as to how this fella has spent 15 years with them. So when people are getting attached to brands and saying, oh, I don't want to post on LinkedIn because of my employer, I don't want to have my open to work because of my employer, did they bring you to Canada? That's what I usually say, like, you got to focus on you and be the CEO of you. And that's how to actually take advantage of the situation and navigate the spaces as a Black professional, in my experience.
Super, super. Thanks so much, Janie. Janie, again, folks, this is getting fired. This conversation is getting fired up, and we need you guys to get involved. Put your questions through the chat. We have a segment where we have a proper Q&A session. We will read out those questions. We want you guys to put your questions to the panelists. It's a very exciting conversation. Again, thank you so much, Janie. We're going to move on to the next question. Again, next question is to Tosin. Tosin, obviously, you're a Black professional. You're someone that's been in different spaces and different community organizations, and you teach people. You coach youth and young adults. What would you say are the common misconceptions people have about Black professionals, and how can we combat these misconceptions?
Yeah, great question. I have to say probably the first one is just in the States, what do you call it? The affirmative action in the States, and we call it equity and inclusion year, that you were hired because you're Black, right? Like there's one of you in this space and they needed at least one. And so that's why they chose you. And that almost, as God is my witness, every single role I've gotten since 2007, somebody has mentioned that to me. They've said it, or asked questions. Oh, who do you know that, right? I've asked questions, and it used to bother me. That's what Janie's point used to be like, okay, now I'm gonna show them, I'm gonna work hard and do all these crazy hours so I can prove to them that I belong here. And again, this is why learning and growing is important. And I started to learn how people make it to certain levels in organizations and realizing that, so I'm a senior director now. I was a director at some point, realizing that everybody that made it to that level, a director, a senior director, could easily make it to the next level. And the thing that separates the people that make it is that somebody's speaking for you to say, hey, take my guy, move him up. right?
Especially in Canada.
Especially, right? To say, so you get to a certain level in your career, senior manager, whatever, depending on the terminologies you use in your space, you know that they've confirmed that this person knows what they're doing, right? Because they moved you, at least you've moved a couple of roles. At this point, it's not about this, it's who's sponsoring you. And so how is that different from, oh yeah, we need to sponsor a Black person into this role, into this company? Furthermore, since George Floyd, I've just been saying that, you know what, if anybody really wants to help me because I'm Black, just sign a check and give it to me. Don't give me work to do. Right?
Yep.
Like, you hired me to come work. Instead, just give me a check, write me a nice, $3.8 million check and say, for being Black, thank you. And I can just walk away. Instead, I've been hired to come and work. And people are now saying that, oh, it's only because you're Black. Well, yeah, well, I'm working. It's not like it gave me like free time here, right? And so for me, again, mindset and learning a bit more about how the system works, right? To say, you don't get to the next level, let's say executives or seniors in your role, by just being good. Like somebody has to take a liking to you as a person. Somebody has to say that, yeah, I've worked with Tosin, I like him. Yeah. What do you mean? Does he know how to do it? Well, of course he can figure that out. I'm talking about, this is what they say about people, right? Of course he can figure it out. Just we'll give him the role, right? And so I make sure that our young folks that I talk to recognize this, that don't question your self-worth or your ability because you feel you have to do double what everybody else does in order to do it. You can do that double and still not get anywhere, right? And even if you were given a job because they were looking to hire Black people, they could, if they wanted to help Black folks, just give you a check, right? And not actually do work. So regardless of that, that's why I say the two things can be true at the same time. I can recognize that maybe I am a diversity hire, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I still show up every day and I do my work and I do good work and I feel proud of that work, right? So I tell folks that. Second, to Janie's point, your career is in your hand, and the only person who can care about it at the level where it can make a difference is you. As well-intentioned as people are, as well-intentioned as these commitments for you being Black and all that stuff are, if you're not putting yourself in position to actually get the opportunities, if you're not putting yourself in those positions, it won't happen. And so I encourage folks to say, okay, to Janie's point, what am I here for? What's my North Star, right? What is the thing I'm trying to get to? And my North Star could be my 3-year goal, my 5-year goal, my 10-year goal. And how is this current place serving it? If I can't answer the question that I'm learning, that's gonna allow me to move closer to that. I'm growing as in positional changes, and it's gonna allow me to get closer to that. And third, compensation. If the compensation here, like, so why stay in this role longer than I need to? And be upfront. I think every boss I've had now for the last 5 years, it's always, yeah, I'll be here as long as I can do 1, 2, and 3. No doubt. And as soon as those 1, 2, and 3 are not existent, we will have conversations, but do know that that means that the writing's on the wall that I need to start figuring out what's next, right? And so we have to own our careers. If folks help us, that's great. If they don't, there's enough opportunities out there that we can, if we knock on the right door, you'll get one. And I personally believe, and I try to encourage our youth in that sense. I also, like I said before, don't like to sugarcoat the fact that, yeah, there are stuff in these spaces that are not made for you and are sometimes actively trying to work against you. But what option do you have? You still have to sort of go out there and do your best, right? So, yeah, I think those are the points. It's like, be completely okay with whether you're the only Black person. Do your best, try to open more doors for people coming behind you. 2, make sure you're serving yourself in every space that you're in, and trying to do what you need to do as an individual to grow. So it means that I don't fully rely on the company to take care of my growth, right? I invest in my own education, whether that's formal or informal. I invest in my own mentorship, whether that's within the company or outside of the company. If I can't get a sponsor within the company that I'm in, that I say to people, my performance has been great. I've done everything that I can, but yet no one is advocating or giving me the exposure that I put them on the spot, right? But you put the company on the spot to respond to you, and the answer is always great for you. If the answer is we will not sponsor you, that's a great answer. If the answer is we'll do something to figure it out for you, that's a great answer. Both of those informations help me figure out what I want to do or not do. Like I said, I think the mindset that allows you to be able to take that kind of feedback is really what is most important. I'm very passionate about it. I think you can hear it in my voice.
Yeah, lots to unpack there, Tosin. Thank you so much. And Tosin, as I was listening, two things stuck out to me. And one is sponsorship. And I know there are folks listening on the call wondering, how do I navigate? How do I get a sponsor? I go to different webinars and people talk about sponsorship. I read up online how to grow as a Black professional. They talk about sponsorship and getting mentors. Now, when you think about both, like, you have any advice for anyone on the call right now? How do I get mentors? And how do I get sponsors? And also, how do I figure out the difference between a sponsor and a mentor, and be able to understand what to take to a mentor and what to take to a sponsor? So perhaps if you want to share from your experience, Tosin, how folks on this call can get can get sponsors as well as mentors.
Yeah, you definitely, mentorship is a lot easier to get. Mentorship is, somebody who's you get 30 minutes of your time and I pick your brain about this particular topic and get guidance. It can be somebody that you meet once and they give you advice on one topic and that's it. That's mentorship. It can be on one topic and I've done this in the past where, because I wasn't able to land somebody who commit to me full time, I asked the same question to like 12, 20 people, right? So over the course of, and that's where I got the 30% from, right? Talk to enough executives about what their journey is, you start to see commonalities, right? And so mentorship is guidance, it's learning, it's really about learning. Sponsorship is about movement, right? Like exposure and putting you in your position to actually put into place the things you're learning, right? To actually activate it. And sponsorship is a lot harder to do. Because you're relying, the person that's sponsoring you is using some of their brand and credibility to stand in gap for you. It's an advocate for you. A mentor, I can mentor somebody and none of you would know that, hey, Tosin comes to me every once in a while and talks to me and I give him advice. And he's trying to learn how to be a better leader. He's trying to learn how to navigate one-on-ones with his boss. And I could talk to you and no one would know that. But if you're my sponsor, people know this, because this person, every time Tosin's name comes up, is always the one to say, yeah, let's give him a chance. Or, you know what? I won't do this presentation. Tosin will come and do this presentation, right? This person is putting you in a position to excel and be exposed and potentially even get a role, right? So there's levels to it, right? They're putting you in a position to get exposed. That's sponsorship. So your manager can sometimes do that to say, okay, for that executive presentation, you go to it, right? So you can get more exposure. In getting that exposure, it allows you, when opportunities come up and there's discussions about what talents do we have that we can promote, people have seen you. If they don't see you, you don't get promoted in certain spaces, right? So if somebody's sponsoring you so you can be seen, you may not realize that's actually good sponsorship. The second, and what most of us expect is, oh, there's a vacancy for this role. Hey, take my guy, Tosin, and give him this role. That's the ultimate that everyone wants to get. That one, it takes a little bit of work to get that, right? The relationship has to be there with this person. One, as in they trust you, they've seen you in spaces. So maybe volunteering, you guys are part of a committee together. They know that this person's of high integrity. One. Second, they also have some influence in the space that you're in. Because if they don't have that influence, they can't use it for you, right? So that's the second. And then third, and which is most important, that they actually want to do this for somebody who may not look like them, right? And those are the things that are difficult. So you can't meet somebody for the first time and say, can you be my sponsor, right? They have to be, sometimes you have to be been your mentor over time. And now they're in a position potentially to then say, okay, yeah, when I get an opportunity, I can put your name forward, right? So it takes time to get there. Another thing that I've noticed in big organizations that we're talking about sponsorship a little bit differently is that, well, we know that there's all these high caliber people that have not gotten a sponsor. We can't wait for a year for them to build a relationship with somebody. You should just help them move forward, right? They've performed enough. You don't know them personally, but they've performed enough for somebody to speak on their behalf. And that's where we're struggling right now, to Jeannie's point, that organizations aren't doing that very well. And you try, if you get lucky, you can get somebody that can do that for you informally, but it's still a very, at least in the spaces that I've been, it's been a very difficult thing to do. But I've answered the question of what it is and how, what kind of difference it is, but how do you get it? I think the first thing is trying to get mentorship from somebody, right? And also second, so through that mentorship, second is to share your goals openly. Share with your boss, share with your boss's boss. Ask to meet your boss's boss once in a while. And just share it. My goal is in the next 3 to 5 years, I want to be, right? And be okay that somebody may laugh at your face for sharing that with them. Be okay with that. They may look at you and say, oh, you're thinking too high. That's okay. Again, be open to the feedback, right? But you may find somebody who you share with that says, you know what? I know what I can do to help you out. And that's the only way. I'm not asking for a sponsor. I'm sharing my goals with them. And maybe through that, they will say, okay, now that I know what he's trying to do, I'll see what I can do to help him. I hope that was a long.
Well, again, I'm saying I'm listening like a participant, because I'm supposed to be taking notes as a panelist and ensure that I'm moderating properly, but I'm listening. And Tosin, thank you so much for the share. There's a lot to unpack there. Again, folks, mentors, sponsors, they're key when it comes to career growth. As Black people, it's not enough to do the work or know how to do the job. You need sponsors, you need mentors, you need people that will help you navigate. And this has been great. Thanks so much, Tosin. And just to recap again, share your goals openly when you're talking to your mentors, when you're talking to your sponsors. Let them know. If it's in your head, and you're beating yourself that you're not getting that promotion, you're not moving anywhere, who knows about what your goals are? Who knows what you're trying to achieve? So let them know, and you'll be surprised. Thanks again, Tosin. We're gonna go to Anthony. And Anthony, I would say, like I usually say, feel free to chime in on the previous question. But this next question here is talking about non-Black professionals. So my question for you, I know you've worked, someone like yourself working from the different places that you've worked, spaces that you've been working. What would you tell a non-Black professional who wants to support the inclusion of Black professionals in career advancement? What would you tell them and help them navigate?
I think let's just remove color out of it to start with. I think we've heard a lot from the participants of the panel, basically talking about the skill, keeping it simple. How can you grow in this role and be successful? So it's not about how do I get my BIPOC quota because I'm helping you. That's not the point. It's about how you actually dredge a path a pathway for progression. Really, that's how you look at it. So I can give example. Can you start to make your
I think we
so can
lost
you make
you
it?
there.
Yeah, I'm back now.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
example, like granular things like how can you have an elevator pitch and resonate in a room? How do you read your room? Like really, let's talk about the things that I need to be equipped at the level at which I'm going to. The skills that are required, but not so much of what I am, but so much of who I am in that role, I think is important. Many times I've actually done the reversal of what you're asking for. So basically I tend to have a lot of sort of Asians, like Chinese and Indian, kind of reach out to me for mentorship on LinkedIn. And really we just look at what they're doing and we look at where they're going, really. That's what I do. I don't really care about kind of where you've lived before, your cultural background, to be honest. It's really about focusing on the simple things that your talents and how your skills can be enhanced for you to get to where you need to get to. And furthermore to that, also understand how to help us or them navigate the blockers that are guaranteed to be there. I think Tosin and James, well, they mentioned a lot about that. How do you leverage times? How many of us, for instance, have heard that you need to speak to your boss's boss? We don't do that typically. We just basically stay. And if we go look at the org charts, sometimes in the reporting line, your direct manager is the only person that can speak for you, for instance, right? Other people don't know about you. They might not even be the same meetings anymore. You want to go there. So really and truly, how do you navigate those blockers? I learned a lot as well, especially my time, at one of the banks on downtown in Bay Street, how really and truly there's some closed door meetings that you have to find yourself on that distro list to be invited to. Let people understand your demeanor, especially in the Canadian setting. I like to think of Canadians, I think a lot of these people on the call are Canadians as well. We're almost kind of the north of the world, really. These guys aren't really exposed to like anything, to be honest. It's just like Canadians, and they got a big cousin in America that just basically trumps over them. Really, that's Canada. And then you're coming in, you don't have your brand, you don't have your identity. So if you're Canadian, for instance, and you want somebody like who's an immigrant who's coming to Canadian environment, how do you navigate through that? I mean, I've been to rooms where things as simple or silly as the amount of minutes you take to reply an email is what determines your scoring per year and ultimately determines your bonus as well at work. And people like me were there to fight for and say, no, Ade knows his job. Let's not look at this thing to determine his scoring, which ultimately it basically affects his bonuses. But you can't know that. I mean, there's a lot of things that I find, and it's so funny because ironic. Canada's opened its door to people, but the room itself that you're going into, you have no clue how it works, none whatsoever, right? And that's exactly what I think. Nobody's addressing this to this day. It's just like doors wide open. It's almost like we're going to a concert and there's no seating arrangement. You're just basically going in and it's like, oh, I'm going to hang on to a pole. I'm going to hang on to, and you can see a lot of people choke. A lot of people choke when they get to Canada. They just get like, I'm just lost. I had it going in Lagos. I had it going in Accra, whatever, in Beijing. But now I don't know what's going on in Toronto because, it's just, you just don't get the way it works. I remember one time I spoke with somebody in an interview to really talk about the first experience of the Canadian winter. I said you have to find 2 or 3 things to identify in a room with that person. And Canadians, we are so happy, like maple syrup and July the 2nd. Like you got to talk about those things, for instance. So if you're there, I'm coming from Nigeria, I'm coming from England, wherever I'm coming from, the things I need to know, the things I must know in terms of how Canadians are working and growing in the Canadian environment, how that helps me is what I want to know, not how I fit in or how I meet a quota or how I help a BIPOC, help me how to network, understand against your point. This was mentioning, I think Jane as well, how do I understand sponsorship and mentorship? And who are the people? Do I look for mentorship in my area, or do I look for mentorship in the area I want to go? How do I go engage them? What do I need to say that I've done or I'm doing that will keep them interested to give me the nuggets that I need? That all of those things are so important. I can't tell you particularly how I navigated through, but I found it particularly difficult, coming from like London, where there was a bigger market. Canada has 5 banks. Think about it. It's a huge oligarchy happening we know about Bell and Rogers and maybe Freedom Mobile, and then the banks is just the 5, maybe Tangerine and HSBC. Literally, they keep the things very tight neat. And here you are, black as you are, BIPOC as you are, breaking through such a very tight neat environment. It's not easy. So you must actually, in fact, this phone call, this particular discussion is important for you. You must be equipped to work and grow in that environment. Almost certainly, you have to grow, because you can't grow if you don't know how it works. I feel like it's almost a cult of membership and base, to be honest. I'll share something very quickly with you. When I was working, I told the bank CIBC. CIBC in my mind is like a family bank. Do you know that a lot of school leavers and first-year university people actually get internship through their dads, their aunties, and uncles to have first-hand experience, such that when they're done, it's easier to sit and get a graduate job. Do you know that? So think about us now. Tosin is a senior director. I'm sure he's one of many, right? How many people can Tosin help to get an internship into? We're not represented enough, to, as it were, right? So to really create a path for yourself to get somewhere, or the generation, we're giving birth to children now in Canada, we're growing, we form a new generation. What is the pathway for them? How do we ourselves grow so others can grow? Those are ways at which, if I'm going to speak to anybody, that's how I'm going to basically speak to them. Think about the blockers. How do we get past the blockers? How do we network? The Great North Initiative was open, especially after Judge Floyd, and I was a big part of it. I bought the hoodie, I bought everything, so happy. Oh, Canada, finally you got the voice going on. But there's one particular thing that I thought was a big, big discredit to us. It was funding that was required for the best of them. Every time, and they didn't know they were saying it. The CEO of Maybank was saying, yeah, we're going to get the bright ones. And I'm saying, so what happens to the others that aren't so bright, but also equally have a chance and opportunity to do so? You see we're missing it there? So Judge Floyd hasn't helped us. Janie killed it, really. There's now a pool. The pool was this small, now it's this big. BIPOC, gender, all things fighting against you to be recognized, as it were, right? And then you're still saying the few platforms you have, the best of you is what we need, nothing more. See you later, doors closed. So really and truly, other routes to get in, other ways to navigate, other ways to network, other ways to know how to be sponsored. Really and truly, I couldn't have said it any better than the other panelists. If you don't know that, really, I'm not even trying to be funny or negative. Canada will just be flatline for you in that environment. You need to understand how it works. You need to help us understand how to navigate, how to grow, and eventually what channels to go through to be able to say, yes, I'm making my mark, I'm growing here, and I can see it as evidence I can pull others as well. That's how I basically will make my point clear to anyone who's a non-Black that can help.
Wow. I just have to take that in a little. There's a lot to unpack there, Anthony. Thank you so much. And these are things. This is sort of conversation we want to have on this call. We want to talk about the real conversations around how we navigate as Black people. And when you're speaking to your non-Black colleagues, we just have to tell them how it is. And because people often have the misconception, they don't have a good understanding of where we're coming from, what the challenges are, how you have to come into a new country and figure things out, and you have expectation, you're leaving your home country, you have expectation of this place, and you get in here and you're wondering, how do I navigate? And when you bring all that to the table and you talk to people, I just want to stick with you here, Anthony, just a little bit. If you can talk about the importance of bringing your full self to the table when it comes to being in the corporate world as a Black professional, bringing your full self to the table. If you want to just speak a little bit about that.
I'll be a bit cheeky by saying that's exactly what they are doing, and I'll just leave it there. That's exactly what they're doing. Okay, so the rhetoric is everybody else, the 30% Tosin talked about here, they come in as they are. So you need to learn as well how to mirror that. And at the end of the day, even for fulfillment's sake, you either win or you don't, and you move somewhere else, we're going to recognize you. But you cannot. And I think, Ada, you mentioned that as well. What if the persona that you're assuming is actually wrong for what they want? That's where it becomes a bit dodgy. That's where it becomes a bit confusing for you. You know, I used to feel like when I'm in a boardroom, I got to wear the cloak of, you know, carry the iPad or whatever and act myself and, you know, really wear that's I am in that role. I'm an L13 at TD Bank. Wow. No, not really, because some days you choke because not you. You actually choke. But when you're coming, you understand what the job requires, you understand what is required of you, and you are constantly doing what's above and beyond what you know, and you have that peace of mind. But really and truly, being authentic in itself, I feel like we're in a very opportunistic era where people are still looking for that newness of you, the brand you bring in. It's changing. That when I started as a university graduate, it was literally whatever they said. Investment banking was all everybody wanted to do. You know, especially, oh my God, whatever it takes. I got to sound like I know mathematics. I got to know. But at the end of the day, it's all just not hard skills. It's not just soft skills. It's a lot of things happening that brings about your brand. So in a nutshell, just come as you are, but do what is expected. My point is, say for instance, and I like to use practical examples, you know, you're an entrepreneur, Jane would jump into this one, for instance. What's your portfolio looking like? You know, what's your next 2 years looking like, 3 years? Do your diligence. That's table stakes. That's why nobody on this panel is talking about your table stakes, about your education or your skills, what you need to know. That's table stakes. We know that. The problem really is how we package what we know and structure it nicely for that it resonates across the room. And so yourself really and truly that's where you come in. Your creativity. Try to infuse creativity into your authenticity. That's literally how I'd say. So I know me. What's that thing to say now? Nigeriano de carry loss. Yeah. So I know that's one thing I can take as a hybrid guy. Okay, cool. I layer my British accent on top as well because I grew up there too. Fantastic. My skill, fantastic. Now I'm cooking jollof rice almost, isn't it? Because I'm putting many things in there. And then I become me all of a sudden. And they've never seen nothing like me before. I'm not Darren. I'm not Tosin. I'm not Josh. I am me. Literally, that's where it starts from, right? I've been able to bring MBA into BA into the fact that I know that as a Black person, we don't give up. And you know, also, there was a time in contracting downtown that every BA and BM had to be Nigerian because the worst projects, Nigerians revived them because we were Nigerians. You see how great you can be being authentic? Do you see how great you already are just being born the way you are as you are? So think about all the elements you can put together into a pot and you are that brand and mix it all together. That to me is your authenticity. Don't try to be 30% of something and 40. No, cook it up together. That's who you are. And they're listening to us, they're learning. Look at us, they're all Black on this call, talking through, mostly Black on this call, and trying to find out how we can win in the market, win in our brand. We really are changing. Things are changing from back in the day. But if you can't really come forward and say, I mean, example is, I went with Muskoka one time and a particular person was very, very shocked that I went with Muskoka. Yeah, guess what? There's a motorway that went there. It's in Canada. I'm Canadian. I went there. That's my authentic self. I didn't go there because you guys go there. I just wanted to hit, and I particularly learned about Muskoka because of the GA Summit or something like that. It was a beautiful place. That's why I went there. But some people were like, oh, they all say that we don't know Black people went to all these other places. They only care about Toronto. But that's my brand. I just want to go. Do you know what I mean? So own it. Find creativity within your authenticity, and honestly, you will go places. But you got to own it first, and owning it meaning including how we shout and how we argue. I'm going to find a nice way to make my point. I say to people sometimes when I say, can I challenge your points? Now, challenging is a better way in the boardroom to speak about it, but I'm intentionally arguing, to be honest. Find a way to repackage it, but it's still me. Always own your brand. Stay authentic, stay creative, and you find out that at the end of the day, you're winning, honestly.
Awesome. I need to add to that a couple of things.
Yeah.
So I thank you so much, Anthony. But I think also, like, as a Black woman, I have to say, in my career, I've noticed that with as confident as I am and all of that, I've noticed that it's easier to own your authentic self when you're more in a senior leadership position. I have to
100%.
say, when you're getting in your first jobs in Canada, you have to, like, I'm not saying fake it till you make it. I don't think that's right. I think you have to only show certain parts of yourself in certain situations to just get your foot in. And Anthony, to your point about supporting immigrants with like knowing how to navigate the space, I was smiling because that's literally what our startup Immunication is about. So we created a whole network of immigrant professionals because I had a job where I was recruiting tech and business professionals for 2 years straight. And immigrants were very timid. They had all the skills on paper. The resumes were sometimes 8 pages long, but they had the skills on paper, but there's that lack of confidence or knowing how to speak and not say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. All those little nuances that subconsciously people count you out for is what's usually missing. And also we were always told, like usually an immigrant always knows 1 or 2 persons that they come and they want to mirror their life after, because that's what this person is doing. So they'll tell you, you need to work in Walmart and work in Starbucks to actually ever work in a career. And so people are coming with those limiting beliefs based on whatever they've inherited from those people, and we wanted to change that. So we actually created a career program that helps people with their resumes, their LinkedIn profiles, how to interview, how to navigate mentorship and sponsorship in Canada for you to get ahead. I never did a grocery store job because I just told myself I wasn't going to do it. But did I do every other thing to keep up, like babysitting, making hair? Yes. But then I learned because I had a brother who told me, you need to get in a study program that has an internship component, your internship point, because then that's how you get your foot in the door in a soft landing and start getting experience, so that once you're done and graduating, you're not starting from zero in Canada. You actually have some experience you can speak to. And those are the things not everyone gets, because it depends on who you're listening to when you come to Canada.
Yeah.
And on the topic of mentorship and sponsorship is not always formal. Sponsorship more usually, but especially mentorship. And when people say, go out and get a mentor and sponsor, I put that pressure on myself. And I'm going to give a real story. I came to Canada, I was like, I'm going to find a Black mentor. And I was so, like, I was pushing, like I had a plan. And everybody else is just trying to get by. Like, it's a tough world being a Black woman in Canada, having to be twice as good, working twice as hard. So a lot of times they don't even have the opportunity to mentor people at that time or bandwidth. So it was me hitting roadblocks. And first of all, I have to say that mentorship now is very informal for me, at least. Like Beyonce is my mentor. Does Beyonce know me? No, but I've learned so much from her and mentor her. So give yourself grace in the sense that your mentor doesn't always have to be a dedicated person who is supporting you lifelong. A lot of times there are people who are just watching you from afar and will support you where it's needed. You don't even realize. And so this one time I was so bent on having a mentor that I hit up this lady. I actually babysat her kid when I was babysitting my master's program. And I never miss out on an opportunity to get to meet a person. So turns out she actually went to the same university as I did. And then she was going to a program in Smith at the time, Smith Business School. So I was like, oh, let's connect. She worked at Accenture. We connected. She was helping me, introducing me to people just so that I can start to get a network. Because when you come, you basically know nobody. And then I was so into that this woman needs to be my sponsor. So I was hitting it hard. I always had an ask. And in one point early in my career, I asked her for something to connect me to someone and I wanted to get a sale. And in that second, I knew that I pushed too hard. And so I could see her retracting after a while. And that was my learning from, oh, Jenny, this mentorship sponsorship thing doesn't always have to go A, B, C, D, E, like you see it on social media. And what I now had to do was, knowing that I had lost that relationship, was now beginning the tough work of forgiving myself for the mistakes I made when I was learning how to get a mentor and sponsor. And a lot of times as immigrants, we just like, oh my God, I messed it up. I messed that interview. I'm going to stay in my shell for 2 weeks. No, it's okay. Like, forgive yourself when you're starting different, because immigrants always say, oh, I'm starting over. And that's what I hear when we're teaching people career readiness skills in communication. Oh, I'm starting over. You're not starting over, you're starting different. Starting over is actually defeating. Starting different means you still have those skill sets and everything you have from an international perspective. Now, let me help you talk about how your GT Bank experience can translate to Canadian experience. And those are the things that people need to think about. But then if you make a mistake, learn from it, note it down. What are you taking from it? And forgive yourself, because if not, you don't move forward. And that's the piece on career readiness that a lot of immigrants don't see and don't think about when coming in. And when it comes to sponsorship, like a lot of times I do a pull strategy, meaning you can push, but also sometimes position yourself in a space where people will speak for you. Do a LinkedIn post. If you're speaking at engagement, post it up there. And that's how people are like, oh, so Jenny actually speaks at things. and starts to recommend you in spaces where it's a situation where there are rooms that you don't have access to. They're talking about you and bringing your name in because you're sharing more about what's going on. And everyone who says, oh, my work is going to speak for myself, that's like back home culture. Work doesn't speak for yourself here. You got to loud it, fam. You got to tell the story behind your work. And then people will start to see that. And sometimes your friends don't even know what you're up to. Forget that whole, oh, my friends and family know me. They don't. A lot of times you have to show them and show your work so that people can know where to speak about you and where to pull you in.
And I'll just chime in very quickly that I think OLADE as well, I've been calling for that we could probably start, I mean, when we start to meet together, maybe we can create something in the summer for these topics in terms of like, I want to call it maybe the insights group, you know, get people like Jane into it and just let's expose what we know and see how it works, maybe even like get people into it. And the reason why I said that very quickly is because I wanted to kind of speak to anyone's listening. Does it actually work? It works. I could tell you that I knew Ade from Manitoba Desa University to where he is today. Toasty and I have had loads of conversation in the past while he's doing his MBA, while he's working before he becomes assistant senior director. I've seen growth too. It does work. It does work. So all of the calls that the conversation on this particular webinar right now, it's not just wasteful. I've seen it. We're living it. It does work. Could be slow, could be progressive, but over time you'll look back and say, yeah, this was what I heard, this was what I learned, this is how I got mentored, and it does work. Just want to pause there and say it's not just like, you know, random things being said. These guys on the call, I've known them a long time ago. They've known me a long time ago. We've seen growth as well. And hopefully through these webinars, through this other, you know, platforms like OLADE Consulting, we can expose you more to what we know, what's working for us, and we can together actually be a force and grow together and progress.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this is super. Thanks so much, Janie, Anthony, guys, and to the audience. I just want to mention that I'm taking notes. I hope you're taking notes. These are some very, very highly talented folks on the call today, and they're sharing real life experience. And it's really important to understand how to navigate. And mentorship is key. Getting sponsors is key. We've heard about bringing your authentic self to the table, understanding how to brand yourself. Anthony talked about that, how to brand yourself, understanding that your core capabilities and your core your background, your core background, as well as your some of those areas that essentials, you know, some of those areas that you're not very comfortable with. It's all part of your brand. And how do you bring it to the table, and how do you speak to people? How do you let them know what you're trying to achieve? How do you speak to your superiors at work? Thank you so much. We're about to wrap up. We're winding down, but we're still going to hear from the panelists. We're going to go around to the panelists right now. I'm going to start with you first, Tosin, because I know you've been sitting there. I'm sure you're itching to share more. The final question is a loaded one, and I know it's going to give the panelists the opportunity to share with the audience what they can take away with. So, question to you will be, what advice, and this is kind of like takeaway from this roundtable, what advice do you have for the participants on the call today, and or what would you want them to go, some takeaways or wrap, or maybe if you want to use this as an opportunity to just give a recap of what you've learned from the other panelists.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, because I'm a big proponent of mindset, mindset and culture, right? Like understanding where I am and what things are in that space. I think you have to, if there's one thing you take away, I think you have to give yourself space to reflect and look at your scenarios that you found yourself in and see what could be done differently. Make sure you're gathering feedback from different people about how you're being perceived in those spaces, and use that to work on mindset. Culture is another one, because I meet with new immigrants all the time. You know, to reach out through LinkedIn and want to talk to me about what do I need to do, and one of the things I always find that is missing is an appreciation for the fact that, and I think Anthony has mentioned this, like the culture is extremely different from what they're used to. just like when I go to Nigeria, I know there's a lot. I remember trying to do business in Nigeria, and because of convenience, took an Okada somewhere. And when I got there, they wouldn't let me into the office, right? Right, like, so for me, it was just like conveniently, I need to take the most convenient thing to get to the office, but the person expecting you to come is like, no, you can't see my Okada, right? So that's a cultural element. Same things here. Like, it's funny, but it's true. Like, there are cultural elements that we need to, in spaces like this, in talking to people that have been here, don't swallow what everybody's experience has been, if it's been bad or good, but learn from it. The cipher, okay, why is it that you were put in that position? What do you think, what is it about the people that you work with, so that you can better understand culture, right? Those are two topics, mindset and culture are two topics that I feel like we don't pay attention to a lot. Our education, the experience, the know-how, I never have any doubt about any of these people that I meet. So when I say people, I mean Nigerians, for example, that reach out to me, or even Indians that reach out. I never have any doubt that they have the skill set, the technical ability to do the things that I do. I always worry about, man, are you gonna realize that the words that are being spoken to you in these spaces can be interpreted a number of ways? Do you, right? Because you're not used to that nuance. And so as a result, I always encourage people to make sure you have a mentor. Make sure you try and get mentorship. And when I say mentorship as well, I mean it in three different ways. Reading books, right? So I did change management for some 3 years. I was a director role. I had never done change management prior to that role as a function, right? But prior to that role, I probably read 20 books on change management. So mentorship for me, somebody would say, well, I can't find a mentor. For me, it was people have written books about this thing. So I became mentored by these authors that have written all these books, so that by the time I showed up in this space, it's a very different version of me that shows up, right? The second is I can't get to one person to commit to me, so I'm going to ask 5 people the same question and see what they say, right? I can get 30 minutes of everybody's time, but I may not be able to get 12 hours of one person's time, right? And so I can also do it through networking and making sure I can get mentorship that way, right? So I'm clear on what I'm trying to get to. And the third is like formal education. As much of it I've already done, I'm actually not a big fan. I like targeted education, right? I'm trying to learn project management. I focus on like targeted, talk to somebody who's done it, really go zero in on it, rather than go do something very, so for me, education is an important part, but I'm always a big fan of mentorship through reading, mentorship through networking. And so I would say those are the things: mindset, culture, and mentorship. I have and the value of that mentorship is important. Like I said, I've taken on roles where I've never done it before because I was so comfortable on the material and the experience that I was able to show up a little bit more confident than I needed to. I've taken on roles, like the role I'm in now, I didn't want to take it, but a mentor said, yeah, go back to your current employer and say, what's my 3-year plan? And if the answer is, right, then you know that you say you're working hard, like, okay, what does it actually, and so that mentor within a 30-minute conversation was able to give me clarity around what I needed to do in that space. It wasn't just based on what I needed, right? And that guy, I've been trying to get him now for another 6 months since that conversation. I've not had the time, right? So I'm not fussed. If I tell him and send a text, I'll say, hey, emergency, we need to chat. You'll get on a 5-minute call specifically about the thing. So we can get mentorship in various ways. And we should be open to that. So if you can't find now one person and that can address everything, diversify your mentorship portfolio is what I would say. So mindset, culture, mentorship, I would leave it at that.
Excellent. Well, I think that's clear. A lot to take away from there. Tosin, thank you so much for your share and for your leadership on the call. We really appreciate it. We're going to go next to you, Janie. Janie, perhaps you want to talk about your takeaways, any final thoughts, or perhaps advice for the participants on the call?
Thank you, Ade. The first thing I want to say to everyone who's listening is, you've already done the hardest job of moving to Canada, like packing your life into suitcases and like going to another entire country. I think it's one of the hardest things. Like, it's different from visiting any place else in the world. So now you have to, everything else, I promise you, it gets easier. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it gets easier from here. And so when it comes to like talking about yourself, your personal brand and all of that stuff, people say, well, I'm not confident. The truth is, you are just not confident right now. This is all stuff that can be learned and honed and practiced. So talk to people before you apply for a job. Talk to somebody in that role. Ask the hiring manager for a coffee chat. Talk to somebody who was in that role. You get the best insights to help you put your best foot forward. I don't believe in like closing your eyes and just firing in the dark. I believe in strategic, intentional opportunities. And to do that, it comes with networking. It comes with understanding what the organization is really looking for, more than it shows on the 1-2 page job description. Clean your house. When I say that, I mean clean your personal brand. A good way to do that is take personality tests. Ask 5 people who you admire in your network what words come to mind when they think of you. This would help you in how you show up on LinkedIn, on your resume, on your cover letter, all of that stuff, because those are the assets, brand assets that you need when you're having these conversations. If you're going to have a speaking engagement, you need a bio, you need a headshot. These are the type of things you should start thinking about when I mean clean your house, because opportunities will come and you need to be ready for them. And then also, I think lastly really is fear and faith both require believing in something that is unseen. Now you get to choose. So in the sense that a lot of things are very fearful, it's very uncomfortable. The first time you're in a program with white people, the first time you're going to an interview, the first time you're in a closed door board meeting. I remember my very first one in TD Towers, I was sweating balls. I kept my head high and said, what would Beyonce do? And so I had to decide that, like Tosin said earlier, pretty much is, I am here for a reason. I was given this opportunity for a reason. I may not be 100% yet, but I'm going to learn. And this discomfort I'm feeling is actually excitement that is just figuring out a way to come out of my body. It's not just nerves, right? So when you have those talks to yourself, so in that same vein, there's always fear and faith talking in your head. Which voice are you listening to? And really surround yourself with a community of people who want to see you succeed. That comes from close friends, that comes from other immigrant professionals who are in the same field as you, like obviously OLED Consulting, if you're in PM or interested in business analysis, if you're interested in just being in a community of other immigrant professionals and you want to clean your house, understand your personal brand, that's what we do at Immudication. And I'm really excited to have that conversation with you and how we can support. And lastly, give yourself grace. Black tax is real. A lot of us are supporting a lot of other people compared to what our other colleagues and coworkers are dealing with. So when you cannot stretch yourself, when you're down, it's okay to go through those feelings. Like, your mental health is real. So just give yourself grace. It's not easy to be a Black professional in these streets, but we're rooting for you. So thank you for, and this is a great time to be Black, like I said. So thank you for actually investing in yourself and coming to this.
Well said.
Well, super. Again, I'm taking a lot from this conversation, Janie, and you're talking about brand assets. You're talking about the opportunity. Bring yourself. I think you're speaking to me. I need to, when you show up on LinkedIn and when people call you, those opportunities are going to come, and I want folks to, take away some of these key points. Strategic, intentional opportunities. Tosin talked about targeted mentorship. If you want to go into project management, speak to folks in that space. Targeted mentorship. We talked about reading books. For me, I get a lot of mentorship from authors. I read a lot of books. It gives me confidence to know certain things that I didn't know, and to learn that other people may have struggled in different stages of their career, and now looking at how they've been successful. There's a lot to take away. Thank you so much, Janie. Thank you for the energy. Thank you for all that you're bringing to this roundtable. I'm sure folks, I'm seeing the comments on the chat, in the chat, folks really enjoying what they've heard from you. We're going to go to Anthony. Again, thank you, Janie. We're going to go to Anthony. Anthony, final thoughts, questions, any takeaways from this roundtable, perhaps maybe what you've heard from the panelists, what advice you have for the audience or the participants. Anthony?
I was just thinking to myself, I became a listener, actually. I think Janie and Tosha nailed it. Thank you for helping me do the panelist job. It was perfect, literally. And Janie, if you don't mind, could you just, that Faith and Fear quote, could you just type it into the group? I'm going to run along with that one. Okay. It's perfect. It's so true. But I'll leave us with the word intentionality at the end of the day. Everything mentioned today, you have to be intentional about it. Why would you carry a book to learn the first place? Because you want to be intentional about it. Why would you know you need a headshot and bio? You have to be intentional about it. At the end of the day, it was capped very nicely into mindset. That's the starting point. What's your mindset? I remember a young lad walking through Bay Street, 2006-07, and this guy carried a suitcase, a briefcase, and I said to myself, I want to be that guy too. I want to swipe my staff card through those barriers and go into all those buildings as well. That's literally was my dream at the time. I just came to visit in Canada because my brother has always lived there. And that eventually happened, where I went from 222 Bay to 70 King and so on and so forth. It comes from the mindset. Whatever it is, it may not be Bay Street, maybe anything you want to do, just make sure that you're really in sync with your mindset. This is exactly what I want to be. So we talked about different aspects, the brand, your fear, the faith, all of those things have to start with being intentional about it. I personally am tasking myself this year to read more, share more, and read more, because there's a lot hidden in these audiobooks and books that we really we're missing out on. And I think sometimes as well, just very quickly, the word that we haven't really mentioned is the confidence. I think Tosi, I'm going to use example. He said, I've done roles before that I hadn't done before, but I was well prepared because of how I read. So my experience aligned with my foreknowledge at the same time. Then I'm going forward with it. What mentioned there is the equal to equals confidence, right? Nothing is bouncing in the room that I don't know about. Nothing in terms of the system, in terms of the ways forward is happening that I haven't seen before, right? So my boss's boss didn't know my name because I didn't set a meeting before to know that person. Oh, this is how it's done. Let me go check the org charts. Let me know who needs to. The knowing is within the intentionality and the learning. You have to be in the know as well. It's important to know, there's no way. I think Jenny, you mentioned it, don't get into a room and fire just sporadically. No, be more targeted, be more structured. At the end of the day, we are a pot of knowledge, we are creative souls, but sometimes all you need is the packaging of it put in.
Yes.
Oh, Anthony, we lost you there for a second.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, thank you. So basically just packaging it and being able to structure it. I think that's where I'm going to leave it there. The world still needs to see us more structured. The world still needs to see us more targeted. The world still needs to see us more collaborative in nature. So all of those things, the platform is open now. We've had hundreds of Black people this, Black people that. What I'm hearing is, let's get to work. Let's do what we got to do. Let's be intentional. Let's be enriched in terms of what we know and show the world and yourself, most importantly, really what you're made of, and enjoy the ride. I had a great hour and a half discussing with colleagues, people I know before, new people. At the end of the day, enjoy it. We're still going to be here next month. We're going to be here, by God's grace at the end of the year. And we have so much to share forwards. Don't forget to enjoy the journey, enjoy the process while you're at it, and you're better off for it.
Okay, super. Thank you so much, Anthony, and thank you to all the panelists. Again, a lot to take away from this call. We really, really appreciate it. And I'm pretty confident that folks on this call benefited a great deal from the panelists, from all the things that they have to share. And we talked about mentorship, we talked about sponsorship, we talked about networking. You need mentors. Look outside of your organization. Often what you find is you might find yourself constrained within a specific organization, but when you start talking to people outside of your organization and you're very targeted and you're very strategic with it, I'm taking from both Janie and Tosin, you're very targeted and very strategic with it. You're focusing on people that are in places you want to be. That helps you navigate. And Anthony shared some very exciting things when you talk about navigating your culture, building your brand, talking about how you understand your persona and understanding that your persona might not be fit for a specific role, but you need to be your authentic self at the same time. Again, there's got to be a balance. We talked about the fact that your authentic self might not be ideal for a specific role, but being able to be adaptable. And we talked about, being able to be adaptable. A lot of things that's been talked about on this call is we're hearing these professionals that have been in places and they've been able to navigate. Sometimes navigating means being able to be adaptable into situations and circumstances and talking to people about what you want. Talk to your managers, talk to your superiors, let them know your intention, because if it's in your head, nobody knows, and we're beating ourselves because we're not getting the positions we want. Just want to share what Janie shared in the chat. Fear and faith both require believing in something we can't see. So again, we need to have that. Again, the mindset that you understand that I have this, I can be in these positions, I can grow, I can attain these positions. Now, often the challenge people have is you want to be in a certain position, you better start acting like it. You better start living it up. You better start living like I am taking on that position. I want to own it. There's a lot we can take away, but we do want to say a huge thank you to the panelists, a huge thank you to all the participants. This has been a fun exercise. This has been a fun listening to it's been fun listening to the panelists. I also want to thank my co-moderator. We were supposed to have some questions in the chat, but I feel like folks on the call were listening in and joining so much. They didn't have their own questions. So what that means is the panelists have done a great job. And just want to say thank you to everyone. This is our monthly roundtable, OLED Consulting monthly PM roundtable. We thank you for joining us. You can follow us on LinkedIn at OLED Consulting. If you have any questions around how to learn about our services, you can reach out to us at info@oledconsulting.com. Alternatively, if you want to reach, you can always engage us on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. We'll be happy to hear from you. So on behalf of our team at OLED Consulting, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. We want to wish you all the best. Be well, be safe. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks,
everyone. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is this going to be shared, please?
Adi.
We will share the recording. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.